Here.
Councilmember Gates, Councilmember McNeil,
Here.
Councilmember Metzger,
Here.
Councilmember Traver,
Here.
Councilmember Underhill,
Here.
Councilmember Wolfersberger.
Here.
We have a quorum, Your Honor.
Thank you. We
I
will
make a
start this
motion
evening with
to
the Pledge of
excuse-
Allegiance.
Oops.
Did you hear that?
Was gonna say something. I didn't think she was gonna move to excuse Jacob.
Okay, Nick, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to make a motion to excuse Jacob Gates, Councilmember
Okay, we
Gates.
have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by member Underhill. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion carries. All right, we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
There's a little echo.
Yeah, if we just make sure our volume and our speakers are off on your original laptops.
All right, we will start this evening with the approval agenda, starting with candidates for public office, followed by public comment on agenda items, followed by the consent agenda. Item 11A under public hearings and council action, we have the zoning amendment application RZ 20.02 to rezone 115 North Grand from professional office service to R3 traditional residential. Under reports and recommendations, 13A, we have the Mansion Street East Drive and North Drive engineering. 13B, we have the Eagle and Jefferson Street project. 13C, we have the Eaton property donation of 116 South Fountain Street. Item 13D, we have the FiberNet service rates. Under appointments and elections, 14A, we have the Brooks Nature Area Advisory Board. Public comment on non-agenda items, followed by council and manager communications. I would like to remove item 13D from the agenda this evening, the FiberNet service rate, and add item 13E, the alley closure for social district. Any other questions, comments, or adjustments to the agenda?
I would make a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Support. We have a motion by member Metzger, support by members Wolfersberger, and we will do a roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
Member Traver,
Yes.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
Member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to candidates for public office. Anyone wishing to speak may do so at this time.
I see candidate Hackworth is on the meeting. I'm not sure if he wants to speak.
You just let you know if he raises his hand or.
Do you want to ask him, Joe?
I think he's connecting here.
I just hit the lock.
Okay.
James, if you, there you go. Thank you.
I'm just here to hang out.
Okay.
All
Excellent.
right. Thanks, Jim.
Thanks, James. Not seeing any others, we will move on to public comment on agenda items. Anyone wishing to address the council may do so. You have a maximum of 5 minutes to speak, stating your name and address for the record. All right, seeing none, we will move on to the consent agenda. Item 8A, we have the city council minutes for the regular session on Tuesday, September 8th, 2020. Item 8B, we have the city bills totaling $2,262,604.08. Any questions, comments on the consent agenda?
I'd make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by member Metzger, support by member Underhill. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger.
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us down to item 11A on the agenda, the public hearing for the zoning amendment application RZ 20.02 to rezone 115 North Grand from professional office service to traditional residential. Tricia, would you brief us on this, please?
Sure. The owner of 115 North Grand approached the city. He's in the process of trying to sell his home. During that process, discovered that the property was zoned the professional office service district. He has an interested buyer. In order to secure financing, it needs to be zoned correctly. Back in June, council approved very, very similar rezoning for Eldon Vincent's property. This property is just to the south of that. So we are asking for this property to be zoned R3 as well as what we did for Mr. Vincent's property at 119.
Thank you. Any questions for Tricia before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, we will open the public hearing on zoning amendment application RZ 20.02. Anyone wishing to speak on this may do so now. All right, hearing and seeing no comments, we will go ahead and close the public hearing. Any additional comments from council at this time?
I just want to say that when in planning commission, when they are looking at these requests, they really do take them quite seriously and thoroughly vet the entire 10 questions that are asked of them.
Thank you, Nick. So the recommendation this evening from the Planning Commission is to approve rezoning request RZ 20.02 for 115 North Grand Street to rezone from a POSD to an R3 traditional residential. Seek a motion.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion by member Traver, support by member Underhill. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger,
Yes.
member Traver.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 13A under reports and recommendations. We have the Mansion Street, East Drive, and North Drive engineering costs. I'm going to ask Marguerite to join us and brief us on this one, please.
Good evening.
Good evening. We can hear you.
Sorry, I have to get to the right thing. 1 second. Okay. The city applied and applied for and received a grant from MDOT under their small urban category for mill and resurface of Mansion Street, East Drive, and North Drive. The project limits are Mansion Street from Madison to East Drive from Michigan to North Drive, and North Drive from East Drive over back to Madison. Most of the project is resurfacing, but we are going to reconstruct the block of Mansion between Madison and High Street. That block shows some more extreme deterioration that warrants reconstruction. So the proposal report tonight is in regards to the engineering services for that project. The city is responsible for 100% of the engineering costs on a grant project through MDOT, and we're also responsible for 20% of the construction cost, participating construction costs. We're responsible for 100% of the non-participating construction costs. For example, the water main installation would be 100% funded by the city, but due to the age of the water main in the area, we are going to have the road tore up. It's a good time to replace the water main, so we're going to do the design for the water main and the road all at the same time. We received proposals on September 10th from 8 firms, all really within a good range, especially if you discount the highest, remove the highest one and lowest one. They're all pretty much within a range we were expecting. I am proposing here to award the contract to ENG or ING out of Lansing, Michigan. They were the low bidder on the project, low proposer. They have done a lot of road work in the Lansing area. We did follow up on their reference specifically in Grand Ledge, and they've had a lot of good success from them. Grand Ledge actually switched from a larger firm to ING because they weren't getting good customer service, and they've really been pleased with them. So I don't think that they've worked in the city, at least recently. So, we're excited to work with them and get the project done. So with this report, I'm recommending that City Council approve the proposal for the work and award the engineering services to ING of Lansing in the amount of $36,805 and authorize the clerk to sign the contract. We would like to fund the contract amount plus a contingency of $4,195 for a total of $41,000 from the Major Streets Capital Outlay budget line item.
Thank you, Marguerite. I appreciate you also checking in on some of the references since this is a company that we haven't worked with before, and some of our local places that have good things to say about them, so that makes it easier awarding a project like this. Could you explain a little bit about how soon this would be able to take place once we were to approve the engineering? The timeline of the project.
Oh, the timeline. Sorry, I couldn't hear part of you. So the MDOT projects are typically designed and constructed on a pretty strict schedule. It's laid out already, so we already know what our deadlines are going into next year. We would try and do the design as soon as possible. There's some significant submittals and work due up front, and then it gets reviewed. It has to go through a historical SHPO review and some other environmental things. In the end, the design would be submitted, nearly 100% design submitted by November. Then it gets reviewed by the state. We would be looking to bid out the construction in May, April timeframe, maybe June if we run into some issues in design or the review. And so the construction would start June, and we're expecting about 10 to 12 weeks of construction. So June, July, August, we should be wrapped up end of August next year.
Thank you. Scott.
Marguerite, I just have a quick question. The boulevard design there by the hospital seems to be where the road is the most torn up, if you will. Is there any, are we looking at redesigning that or just beefing it up? What is it you're looking at there?
Currently the water main runs on the north side of the road there. So I would expect the north curb to get torn out. We are not planning to replace the existing boulevard or redesign any of the landscape in that area. Hopefully we can utilize some of the existing curb on the boulevard. However, it has been paved over based on some of the needs in the past, and so we'll have to see how that looks. But essentially, the finished product will be dimensionally the same, and the boulevard will stay in place due to its traffic control benefits.
Any other questions from council this evening regarding this project?
You're looking at all of Madison, is that right?
Mansion.
Not Madison at all.
No, not Madison at all. Just it start on Mansion at Madison and work east.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Yep. I should also note that the construction is currently the construction budget that we used for the MDOT application was around $750,000 for construction. So these engineering prices being 5-6% are very competitive. And so that's good. I think that it's a simpler project sometimes and sometimes not because of it being funded through MDOT. But knowing the schedule and submittals helps us get efficient pricing.
All right, any additional comments or questions? All right, hearing none, the recommendation is to approve the proposal for the Mansion Street, East Drive, and North Drive engineering services to E&G of Lansing, Michigan, in the amount of $36,805 with an additional contingency of $4,195 for a total amount of $41,000, and to authorize the city clerk to sign the contract.
So moved.
Support.
We have a motion by member Wolfersberger and support by member Metzger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have 13B, the Eagle and Jefferson Street project. Marguerite?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This report is in regards to the Eagle and Jefferson Street project that is currently is basically constructed. Back in May, if you recall, we awarded the contract to Hunter Prell of Battle Creek for a total funded amount of $690,000. It was funded through the Water Department capital outlay and Major Streets capital outlay. This was work downtown on Eagle Street from Mansion to Michigan, then Michigan to Hanover. Also Jefferson Street from Mansion to Michigan, and then Green to Hanover. So 5 blocks of water main replacement and road improvements. As happens at times, we ran into some unforeseen challenges with the project, especially with some older existing infrastructure in regards to stormwater that needed to be replaced. We also ran into some unsuitable materials. When we were excavating, specifically on North Jefferson, we removed the concrete parking lanes that were, basically falling apart. And when we were reinstalling, digging down to get a good bed of material, the concrete was fairly thick there. We ran into some poor materials that we actually had to remove and replace with good material. All of these items required us to increase pay item quantities, which ended up with us being over the funded amount by $142,932.96. So we ended up with a total project cost of around $833,000. Another item to note is we had to, once we got into South Jefferson Street and inspected some underground utilities, realized that there was a drainage issue with that road and we had to fix it. The drainage issue actually probably caused some premature failure of the existing asphalt in areas. And I don't know if you remember, but on the east side of that road, there was some low spots that were collecting water and the water wasn't draining. So that required us to replace curb on that side of the road. We also had to replace a pipe that was discovered and was in poor condition, 12-inch storm sewer pipe. So that area added to the overall cost. In the end, the project has been successful. It looks good. It's been well received by the public. So those are all good things. But unfortunately, sometimes when you're working in certain areas, you run into these issues. So the recommendation tonight is to approve a budget amendment increases to the water fund and the major streets fund of approximately $72,000 each, splitting that additional funding needed between the two capital outlay funds.
In
know
the
that-
places where there was inferior materials used, can we go back against the company that used those materials?
No, there would be a limit to how long we could hold them responsible based on when it was constructed. We'd be significantly past that limit.
These are probably materials that were put in 50 to 100 years ago.
Oh. Never mind.
And practices change, right? So 50 or to 100 years ago, that it might have been great material for what was available and what was accepted. So
Use the terms aged material.
yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I know that it costs a little bit more to take care of these things now, but it certainly is the right time to do that to help extend the life of the infrastructure that we're investing in. So I appreciate you doing that. Any additional comments or questions for Marguerite at this time?
I guess my only comment is, I think we originally approved the budget with a contingency already included in the earlier meeting in May. Would there have been a way during the course of a project like this to get more incremental budget updates? Like if we think we're really skewing above, because we ended up going, sounds like about 20% over the original approved budget item, including the contingency that we approved. 20% is really significant, and it seems like something we could have gotten an update on earlier. Is there a mechanism to do that for future projects?
Marguerite, if I may, when the millage, or if or when the millage passes for the road project, we're looking at probably $1 million contracts over 3 years. What we can do is keep you abreast of the payments to the contractor, any extras that we see along the way, because that'll be a several month project. So yes, that can be done.
Any other comments or questions this evening? All right, hearing none, the recommendation is to support the funding of the additional $142,932.96 for the Eagle and Jefferson Street improvements, and approve the budget amendment increases to the water fund capital outlay in the amount of $71,466.48 and major streets fund capital outlay in the amount of $71,466.48. Seek a motion.
so moved.
We have a motion by member Metzger, support by member Traver. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member McNeil. Member Metzger,
Yes.
motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 13C, the Eaton property donation at 116 South Fountain Street. Eric, could you please brief us on this?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Earlier, well, it's probably been for last year, the city's been working with Eaton on the possibility of donating the property at 116 South Fountain. It's plus or minus 1.64 acres. Has been used historically, as far as we can tell, as the parking lot. And as such, with the donation and with the location of the former Eaton property across the street, we hired Triterra out of Lansing to perform a phase 1 environmental. We wanted to make sure we weren't getting any issues. They completed that, did historical records, interviewed people, and their recommendation is that no further investigation was needed. So we didn't need to take the next steps on to drilling down into the ground and things like that. As such, staff is recommending accepting the donation and authorizing the clerk to sign the agreement, which would allow us to use the property moving forward. At this point, we're looking at it for recreation, the rec department. They have a plan that has been put through the PRC. Councilman Underhill saw that out the one meeting we had, which we intend to bring to you in the future to have you sign off on it. But at this point, I know I just changed Attorney Revore to active on here. He's reviewed the agreement. I'll let him comment on anything related to the agreement, but there was one clause with the release that with the phase 1 done, I think staff was a little bit more comfortable with an environmental release the Eaton required, accepting that donation. So,
Could you explain how this abuts up to our already owned property?
yes, the property right now, the west side of the property is the volleyball courts. And then it goes all the way to the corner of Fountain in Hanover, then goes down to New Horizon. So it kind of takes that southeast corner of the athletic field complex and sits higher up on the hill. There is a slight elevation decline going down to New Horizons. They've been using the southern half of that parking lot for vehicle storage and equipment storage over the last year or two, from what we could tell. But if you look up there, it's pretty much just an asphalt parking lot that's kind of really degraded. At some point, we would go in and need to remove all of that asphalt, but I think that's next steps, trying to figure out which direction we want to go at this point.
Any questions for Eric at this point?
Are we, I mean, do we have any idea what our restoration costs are going to be for the property?
I think it just comes back down to how we're going to use it. We have a plan. We have not put a cost to the plan. That is something that Marguerite is going to help me lay out. We're going to try and do as much as we can in-house for now. That will help develop some budget costs. But removing the asphalt, and I'm not going to hazard a guess, but I don't think it'll be horrible just to, if we wanted to seed it, but we wanted to try and, if we were going to, for example, if pickleball wanted to go there, we can move into that quickly and start on one edge of it. If we're going to use it for parking, depends on how much work we want to do prior to move forward. It could be, it's been used that way for now, so.
And would the plan be to let New Horizons continue to use the parking lot?
I've talked to the owners at New Horizons and their business representatives. They are looking at a new location. I have not been able to get a date to when that may occur. So we will work with them and see if we can come, if they can keep it clean until we need it, until they move. We want to work with them as a business that is pretty cramped in there now.
All right, any additional questions or comments this evening?
I can't imagine as much being parking lot, but how much will we lose on tax capture
Hundreds of dollars.
a year?
How much?
A few $100s for the city portion.
Well, I think it's been a parking lot most of my life, if not all of it. So I'm not surprised that it doesn't have the same theoretical issues as the other lots.
Which is why we were,
Yeah.
we were nervous, but we double checked, but we weren't as nervous about if it was
so hearing no other questions or comments, the recommendation this evening is to authorize the city clerk to sign the Eaton donation purchase agreement, accepting the donation of the property located at 116 South Fountain Street.
So moved.
We have a motion by member Wolfersberger, support by member Underhill. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Metzger,
Yes.
member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member McNeil.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That moves us to item 13E, the alley closure for social district. I don't know if Eric or Tom want to brief us on this.
We discussed this back in July, and after a lot of work, we finally received approval of all 5 applicants, and we're ready to move forward this Friday. There's actually a kickoff event scheduled. I believe you should all be getting an email if you haven't already. In the process, as we discussed, we were looking at closures in the South Alley. Based on feedback we've received from building owners from the original meeting, is we made some adjustments. We took out the closure from the east end of Herman's Hardware to the west end of Mr. Herman's private parking spaces up next to Schuler's. So that's staying open, was the plan. At the same time, from like Mark Stewart's building down to near Broadway, at the same, we heard from a few building owners about accessing parking spots, things like that. So we left that portion open as well. So we had 3 separate sections that we were looking at for closures, one from Eagle to about East End Gallery-ish. The other one from the Copper down to Mr. Stewart's building, and the other one from the west side of Broadway to Jefferson. That seemed at the time that most of the feedback we got was positive on some of the changes. We've heard since then, starting specifically Friday when we talked about the closure, Mr. Herman's still not excited about the closure of the alley from Eagle to East End. His contention is his customers don't have access through there to his parking spaces and building. So he's requesting us to remove that closure.
I think another thing that we didn't really have on top of mind too was the East End elevator project, which is really jutting out into a good majority of the alley at that, at this point in its project. There are a lot of construction materials and equipment being stored back in that area, and I'm not sure that it's the safest spot to have people congregating at this time. I think it's something that we could continue to, check their progress, and once they get close to having that completed and the project completed and that equipment moved out of there, we can certainly revisit this. But at this time, I don't feel that section would probably be a great place for the public to be spending a lot of time in.
I do agree. I do have concern, if we're going to break up what's closed in the alleys, I'm worried about continuity of the social district. Just from a standpoint of, what are we going to do for signage to make sure that people are clear on what, where they are and what they can do. And
I agree. This doesn't change the size of the common area. So people will still be able to buy something from Schuler's, for example, and walk down. This only changes the areas where we're actually closing if somebody wanted to put out tables and chairs. Okay. So the signage should be in tomorrow, I believe. And we're working with DPW to get them up by Friday. So it will still be in the areas that we talked about on Green and over by the Stagecoach and all the way down to Jefferson. This will just say, instead of being able to stop, hang out at a table or chairs or really stand around, you would keep moving down to the Copper area or the Broadway, Grand River areas.
I still think we're making a very big mistake by not having it on Main Street like every other city that I know of.
By not having it where, I'm sorry?
on Main Street.
I certainly think that, with the time of year, it's going to be too hard for us to get that switched around at this point with the limited amount of weather that we have left. But this is certainly something we can revisit, as soon as possible, really, to decide to, change the boundaries of the district and move it up front, in front of the buildings as opposed to being in the alleys.
I think that would be ideal. I think you'd get a lot more buy-in and support from the community too.
Definitely.
And I would agree, though. One thing to remember is you set the boundaries. You're completely responsible for that. You don't need approval from the state. Liquor control, all we do is notify them when of our change in plans. And basically they received our plan and said, okay, Marshall's approved it. We can start approving businesses.
I agree. And
There
Eric,
are other,
I did make I did make statements last time that I didn't think it should be in the alley.
no, I'm just letting you know going forward, if that is a change you want to make, it's relatively easy. We just we'll do another resolution ordinance and change it and move forward on that. So as you learn things, as you see your things, I mean, that's something, if you get back to staff, we can be prepared and adjust as you desire.
So I don't believe we need to vote on this evening. We just wanted to get consensus of council for that adjustment.
What were the hours again? Sorry. Let's walk.
The hours are Friday 4 to 11, Saturday noon to 11, and Sunday noon to 8.
That's the only time they shut down on those hours.
Well, no, the one problem we have is we just don't have the staffing on the weekends to take up and move down barricades, cones. So the closures themselves, we're looking at staying open that way for the entire weekend. The concept that Maida was hoping for was other businesses would use that opportunity to put things outside in the alley and promote their businesses. I know of one who expressed some interest. I haven't heard much on that front lately. So I don't know that this impact will be to that. But that's something, once again, as you receive feedback, that's an adjustment you can look at.
Have we thought about the winter time as is that something Maida is going to work on, or is that going to be?
Yeah, Chris for Maida has been working on the concepts for winter and what options that are possible for a winter type atmosphere. The Copper had expressed, we had a meeting with all the businesses to talk about what was going on, education. So the health department was on. We talked about it from a policing requirement. Hey, this is what you need to look at. The Copper had expressed the possibility of maybe throwing out those patio type tall heaters and instead of tables and chairs to begin with, so that they could extend the season and people might be willing to stand outside around them. So Maida is looking at providing a set amount per business to buy tables and chairs. And the question was, well, can we use that money for heaters? Can we use that money for other related type of materials? And Maida's reply was, sure. I mean, they're providing that to help the businesses, make this succeed and help the business profit from it. So we haven't heard for sure, but that was where we left it at that meeting.
Were we looking at James' comments as well?
Mr. Hackworth, there's been some discussion on staff about the igloos. We have not gone any farther than that, but it is an interesting concept. We just have to weigh some of the problems. I know the health department is really coming down right now with the current environment, the executive orders, anything inside, and they're considering, I've seen some language that says a tent is inside, even though that we got a little different from the health department. The state is saying tent is inside. So the health department is really pushing us to stay away from anything that has a lot of people congregating. But I do like personally, I love the concept of the igloos. I think they're pretty cool. We should figure out where to put them.
We have those in Kalamazoo.
Yeah, I've seen them in Chicago as well, down by the river. They're just, but they're actually charge a premium. They rent them out.
around the fountain be kind of.
Now you're really talking about changing the district. You're right, it would be.
Yeah, I think igloos would be absolutely cool, but in this COVID environment,
Yeah.
probably worse than being in the bar.
Right, and most of the ones that we see, in Kalamazoo and Chicago are all privately owned. They're not necessarily owned by a public entity. And like you were saying, Eric, the health department is going to require someone to be on staff to sanitize that area after it's used every time. And I'm not sure that how we could coordinate that at this point. So,
No, it
but
almost have to be the responsibility, at the very least, of the
restaurant or
restaurant,
whoever's serving, right? All right, any other comments or questions at this time? All right, Eric, thank you for your update. We'll move on to item 14A on the agenda. Under appointments and elections, we have the Brooks Nature Area Advisory Board. The recommendation is to approve the reappointments of Jane Schoenmeyer and Margaret Orther to the Brooks Nature Area Advisory Board with terms expiring August 15th, 2023. Seek a motion.
So moved.
support.
We have a motion by member McNeil, support by member Wolfersberger. We'll do a roll call vote, please.
Member Traver,
Yes.
member Underhill,
Yes.
member Wolfersberger,
Yes.
Mayor Karen,
Yes.
member McNeil,
Yes.
member Metzger.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. That brings us down to item 15 on the agenda, public comment on non-agenda items. Anyone wishing to speak may do so for a maximum of 5 minutes, stating their name and address for the record. Just please either raise your hand on Zoom or comment in the chat function. All right, seeing and hearing no comments, we will move on to Councilor and Manager Communications. Member Traver.
I'd just like to say thank you to Eaton for their donation of that property to our city and to our rec department, and I hope we can utilize it to its full potential.
Thank you. Member Underhill.
Have anything?
All right. Member Wolfersberger.
I'm going to share some unfortunate news. The Land Bank did not receive any bids on the Golden Rule property with their package that went out in August. We are hoping to have a meeting, well, we are going to have a meeting of the NIA in October, and so hopefully we'll have some update on next steps there, but for the moment, we're not moving forward yet.
That is unfortunate.
Yes.
All right, Member McNeil.
We had the airport board meeting last week and had a tour of the new terminal building. It's coming along well, and we expect it will complete on time at the end of October.
Thank you. Member Metzger.
Nothing. I was gonna say I was at the planning commission, but we already voted on what we discussed. So, no.
Thank you. Clerk Nelson.
Yes, and the ballots will be going out in the mail on Thursday. Right now, we have about 1,800 that are going out, so it's my life for the next 6 weeks.
They're going out when?
Thursday,
How's it going for you?
it's going.
Okay.
It's tedious, it's a lot of work.
Oh, I know. Tom, real supportive, like bringing you breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and
All she has to do is ask.
no, she shouldn't have to ask.
City Manager Tarkowitz.
Nothing tonight.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank staff for helping put together this format for the meeting. I know it took a lot of work, but it seems to have worked quite seamlessly. So appreciate your time and effort on that, and of course, everything else that you do on a daily. And that being said, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Good night, everybody.